Hello, hello, and welcome, Dixie Belle paint fans. How are you today? It is Melissa from the Top Drawer RVA coming to you live, where we hang out every Wednesday at 3 p.m., sit on the floor, and play with paint. So how are you today? I hope everybody's having a great day. I am kind of excited. There's some new things happening at Dixie Belle, and I get to show you a couple new products that debuted today. And if you were interested in checking them out, you can contact your local retailer, and they will let you know if they will have it in stock. So today, Dixie Belle released a couple new stencils, and I have already played with mine. See that cutest little tray up there? So cute. This is actually a tray that I painted in drop cloth. This is my tray for my my living room coffee table. It's quite large, heavy. My kiddo made it. My son made this for me like, oh gosh, 8 years ago or something, and it needed a refresh. It was getting kind of junky, so I thought I would flip it. So I came in and painted this in drop cloth. I then did a little bit of a stencil on here. This is a brand new basket weave stencil. You know who designed this? AJ from AJ's Vintage Designs. She designed this beautiful stencil that I used right here on this little tray. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love, love, love this basket weave. I actually think I'm going to try it in a raised stencil next because it looks super delicious. I'm very excited. So that is what this stencil looks like. And then I added, of course, the buds and branches, which is my design for the transfer, over top, and added a little bit of dark wax. Isn't it cute? Now I can put it back, oops, sticking to some tape. Now I can put it back on my coffee table and look at the cuteness every day. It's super adorable. Let me move it over because it's kind of heavy. So after the basket weave, we also have two more. We have the trippy blocks, which can you see? Can I hold it up against something that you can see? I guess I might need a background here so that you can actually see the pattern. Can you see that cute little pattern? Trippy blocks is adorable. I think this will be really good on the sides of drawers. I really like this kind of style, and it fits perfect on the side of a drawer. And last but not least, one more over here. This was designed by Tracy's Fancy. This is the nail head trim. Did you guys see the cutest little toolbox that she made? She did the cutest toolbox, and she did do a raised stencil, and it looks like actual nail heads. She gilded them in gold. They're so cute. If you haven't seen it, go over to her page, Tracy's Fancy, and check it out because she did a super cute little box, and I love it. So I just want to take a minute and show you all the new things because I like new things. It makes me excited before we get started. So what are we going to work on today? We got a cutie little, what do you want to call this? Toy box? Toy chest? It's actually adorable. I have not finished slick sticking the interior, but I did slick stick the exterior of this piece because it is that shiny kind of like a melamine material. Let's see if I can get the tray out. Okay, so when you look at materials and you're gonna paint them, can you see how shiny that is? See that shiny reflection in my light? This is like a shiny plasticized surface. This is why I use slick stick. Number one, I'm not gonna sand in my dining room. I mean, I do sometimes, and it's pretty messy. But I'd much rather do 2 coats of slick stick, get it prepped, get it primed, and get it ready for paint. So when you do slick stick, you need to know that it is something that you need to prepare for. Slick stick needs to be applied, and then you need to wait 24 hours before you paint it. You're gonna apply 1 coat, wait 2 to 4 hours, let it get dry, come in, apply your 2nd coat, and then you're going to wait 24 hours before you paint. I see a little drip over here, some slick stick I have to fix with a bit of sander, but we're gonna work on the outside of this little cutie toy box today, and I thought you might wanna hang out. So welcome. Thanks for joining me. If you're tuning in late, my name is Melissa. I am the owner artist here at the Top Drawer RVA, and I am a Dixie Belle brand ambassador. Let's see. I see some people watching. Hi, Elizabeth. Hey, Olga. How are you? Okay, so I do a lot of talking, a lot of teaching, and not a lot of reading of comments. If I happen to miss your comment, I do come back in after the video is finished and rewatch everything to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So please drop your comments in as we go along. Sometimes I have some really great Smarty Pants fans on here that know the answer, and they are able to help me and get the answer done before I even see it. You never know. You never know. So if you know the answer, chime in. But today we are going to paint this little tiny chest in some ombre blue colors. We're also going to stick some Woodubend on there. Have you heard of Woodubend? Woodubend is like my jam. I love Woodubend. Woodubend is your jewelry for your pieces, okay? So this piece is cute, but when I look at it, even though it's like ready to go and it's had its slick stick on there, it looks a little juvenile. Don't you think? Like it looks a little babyish. I wanna like zhuzh it up and make it a little bit more fancy, not so juvenile, if you catch my drift. So this Woodubend, this is Woodubend number 1333.10, okay? Check it out. If you need it, screenshot it. This is available on the Dixie Belle paint page under tools. These come in a set of 2. So Woodubend is actually made from wood. This is a wood product. You can do a lot of stuff with Woodubend. You can put this behind like a little handle or a knob and drill right through it. This would be super cute on the front of a drawer. You can bend it when it's warm and mold it around shapes. This one's actually pretty chunky. See how thick that is? Really cute. You can sand them, you can paint them, you can stain them. I mean, the options for Woodubend, that's why I call it jewelry, because it really zhuzhes up all the things. They are super cute. You love, I see Amy watching. Hey Amy, how are you? I love Woodubend. I love the rolls of trim, and I love the little decorative accents. So these tiny panels have like almost like a basket weave lattice work on them already. This is fake, y'all. This is like a plastic thing, but beggars cannot be choosers, and it's really hard for me to find the amount of furniture that I need to paint. So when I saw this little guy at the thrift store, I mean, it's solid, I took it home. We're gonna fix it up and make it look fancy pants. So my plan is to take each of these little Woodubends and then adhere them to the front of this piece. All of a sudden, when you're looking then at this little chest, it kind of becomes like a little more interesting, don't you think? It doesn't look so juvenile anymore. Like, it just adds that special little touch of, I don't know, adolescence to the juvenile chest. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe not. Let's see. Somebody's talking to Amy. Hey Donna. Okay, so how do you use Woodubend? Have you tried this before? We're gonna do this first before we paint, and then we're gonna jump into some moody blues and some ombre painting with my best dang brush, which is like the best way for me to paint. So we're actually gonna like just do half of this chest today, if you want to. This is my plan. Work on this section, figure out my vibe. This one wasn't speaking to me. It took a good 3 or 4 days of looking at it before it said, paint me blue. So we will do blue, and then later on over on my own page, if you want to come join me, I'll be adding Dixie Dirt and Earth and some gold, and it's going to grow up. It's not going to be a toy chest anymore. I think this would be great at like the end of the bed for storage, and you know, maybe even by the door when you come in the house to put your mitts and your hats and all your stuff in. I don't know. Let's do it. Okay. So what is Woodubend? Woodubend is your bendable, stainable molding that you can apply to any piece. Again, located under tools on the Dixie Belle paint page. There are only, I think the only designs that are available on the Dixie Belle paint page are all exclusive. So you're not gonna find this Woodubend anywhere else. You need to find this on the Dixie Belle paint page, contact your local retailer, see if they carry the Woodubend as well. All right, so how do you put this on? Because right now, it's hard, right? Like, it's like a hard piece. If you were to bend this in this state, it would break. You need a couple tools. You're gonna need wood glue, and you're going to need a heat gun, okay? Or a heat source. You could use a pancake griddle, like where you lay your Woodubend flat on there, or you could use a hairdryer even. But you need a heat source and you need wood glue, because this is a wood product. All right, so I'm gonna put some paper towel on the floor down here so I don't catch fire to my moving blanket. Might be a nice fun surprise live video if I caught fire to the floor. Stranger things have happened. I'm gonna put this on the floor, and I'm gonna aim you down so you can see exactly what I'm doing, okay? There we go. Now you can see my little Woodubend hanging out here on the floor. So we're gonna take this heat gun. Let's see if I can move this glue out of the way first before I get cracking. And we're gonna heat it up. Woodubend must be warm before you apply it. And I often get the question, well, hey, it looks pretty flat. You know, this looks like flat, and this is flat. You should just stick that on that and you'd be good to go. That is not the Woodubend rules, y'all. Nothing is really truly flat, especially working with vintage furniture. If you are a furniture painter, you know that sometimes things are wonky, to put it nicely. Sometimes they're wonky, sometimes they might not sit entirely flat, and you need to then make sure that it's flat to the surface. Okay, so once this is warm, it becomes bendy. This piece itself is pretty chunky. I'm not gonna bend it because it's just gonna warp it. So the thicker your Woodubends are, the harder they are to bend when they're warm, because they are really, you know, the thicker the Woodubend, the harder it is to actually bend it. That might be a bit too much glue, but that's okay. Too much, never can have too much, right? So now I've got my glue on there. This is what's gonna happen. You're going to, if you were a good girl, measure to know exactly where the center of this piece would be. Or if you're just me, flying by the seat of your pants, like we always do, we're just gonna stick that sucker on. Here's the deal, if you actually did stick this on and it got dry and you were like, hey, I did a crooked job, or my measurements were off, or I don't like how that looks on my piece, you can always heat this guy back up again and then take it off. Did you know that? Did you know you can take them off? I've actually done a couple demos with Woodubend where I've stuck them on a thing and then heated them up after I was done my demo and put them back in my little stash because I'm not going to waste these. They're like gold to me. Love them. All right, so now that it's centered and it's on my piece, what are you going to do? You're going to heat it up again. You want to make sure that this heat gun is heating your piece. Number one, helping our glue dry a little bit. Number two, just ensuring that it's flat to the piece. All right? Then, once it's dry and on there, you are ready to paint. You can paint right over top of it. I can paint over top of this in 5 minutes. I'll be good to go. So now that I know that this is on there, that my glue is adhered, I'm gonna leave my tape for a little while. This is just my safety measures to make sure that it's stuck to the piece and it's gonna stay where I want it to stay. Let me give it another look. That looks pretty darn center. Doesn't that look pretty center to you? I think so. Let's get painting. Let's play with some paint. Okay, so obviously I'll do the Woodubend to the other side, la 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 la, but I wanna show you all the things while I have you. Captive audience, where we can paint together and create some fun stuff. So we're gonna paint some moody blues today. We're gonna do like a moody ombre blue, all right? And now the colors I have today are very close together, which makes your blending super duper easy. Did you know that if you pick two colors that are very close together on the color wheel, your blending job becomes super easy? It really does. So today we have Antebellum Blue and Vintage Duck Egg. Check out those beautiful, beautiful colors. Aren't they gorgeous? So my plan for this is to do, I think, majority of this in Vintage Duck Egg. Then kind of take that little bit of Antebellum and like put it in the corners and start to darken those edges. We're gonna do 2 coats of paint, but today we're just gonna kind of get started and play with some paint and see where I want this look to go. I mean, you could go dark from the bottom, like dark, and ombre the blue up, but I think I want the whole thing to be a gorgeous, cloudy blend. Let's see, thank you, Amy. It is a pretty color combo. But if you were ever curious about what colors are going to be blended easily, the closer they are together in the color value, the easier your job will be. All right? I have a couple brushes on the floor. No rhyme or reason to how I'm gonna do this. My well-loved and used medium flat. I have my mini, and I have a flat large. In order to do the style of blending that I plan on doing today, you will need your best dang brush. And guess what? Not this one, because look what I wrote on it. Wax brush, exclamation point. This is not my painting brush. This is my painting brush. That's why I wrote it on there. Literally, this is what I have to do. I have to write myself reminders and put them everywhere. I was that kid at school that like wrote all of their notes on their hand to remember what they need to do every day when they get home and do their homework. I would have stuff all over me. So yeah, wax brush. Don't use your wax brush. Use your paintbrush. This is your best dang brush. You need this best dang brush for blending, and it really, really does a great job for waxing. So I have one for painting, one for waxing. And if you have one too, make sure you write on it that it's your wax brush, or put a hair tie on it, or a ribbon, or something. There was a hair tie on this until one day when I was painting and I needed a hair tie, and this is how we roll. It's like you just follow that little squirrel, and next thing you know, nothing is done. Carry on. Let's get painting. Okay, I have a spray misting bottle filled with water. What this is going to do is help my chalk mineral paint stay movable. All right, now remember, this has a base on it of Slick Stick. Slick Stick only comes in white, which means you're going to use a little bit more paint because you have to cover this white. But to be honest with you, the inside like of this, where I can show you the true color of what it really was that really yellow vanilla color. So I would have been working just as hard. Unless I use my Gray Boss primer to tint my piece, this is what we're gonna start with. All right, so here we go with my favorite brush. Let's start with some Vintage Duck Egg and see what kind of magic we can make happen. Like I said, we're not gonna paint the whole piece today. I'm just gonna get an idea of where I want everything to live. So I think using a combination of Vintage Duck Egg and Antebellum Blue, I think it's gonna make this piece just kind of grow up a little bit, right? Make it look a little bit more mature and maybe get away from that juvenile toy box look. I might be wrong and I might end up repainting it. It's happened before. But to begin with, I'm gonna start off with this beautiful blues to see what I can do. These little dots were actually rainbow colored before I started painting. It is a kid's toy box. I think what will happen is once I'm done and I start to accent them a little bit more, they're gonna look more like nail heads. I would hope. And if not, maybe I'll get crafty and on the sides of this piece, I'll use Tracy's nail head stencil to do something along the same lines, because I think that kind of pulls it together too. But there was already a basket weave here, so I didn't really want to like add this on top of that. Unless I did a textured look. Who knows? Like I told you, this piece just wasn't talking to me. Do you ever get a piece of furniture that you're just like, I don't know what you want to be? I usually sit on the floor, have a coffee, talk to my furniture a little bit, and ask it, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? What color do you want to be today? Does anybody else do that? Just me? That's okay. I know I'm a strange girl. It's all right. It's okay to talk to your furniture if you do. Don't be worried about it. Okay, so I think I also painted this part of the interior because when this lid is shut, you can actually see an opening, which I think is partially a safety method, so nobody would ever get stuck inside and not be able to breathe. I did paint this lip of the piece in my slick stick so that when it is closed, you might still see that top little edge. So I will be painting this edge blue as well. So that's that gorgeous Vintage Duck Egg. Beautiful color, right? Super, super pretty. Let's paint our Woodubend. Let's see how good it's stuck on there. So you take your tape off. She's feeling pretty sturdy on there. Let's paint right over top of it. So you can actually paint these Woodubends after if you wanted. Like if I wanted to paint this entire piece and have the Woodubend be gold, like bright shiny gold with definite edges, I would wait. I would paint the entire piece, paint this gold, and then stick it on. I do that a lot. It's kind of a sneaky way of getting some seriously good detail on a piece that you might not be able to see before. Because if you put this on here, paint it blue, and then change your mind and you want to come back in and say paint it bright gold, you're gonna have to use very tiny brush to get into all the edges, and that's not gonna look as like clean and defined as if you did it after. So there we go, we've painted our Woodubend, and we've got like our little base of Antebellum Blue. Or this is not Antebellum Blue, this is Vintage Duck Egg. We have Vintage Duck Egg down here. We're gonna add the Antebellum Blue to the piece. So I'm gonna pounce some paint in here because this is actually kind of like that textured, like I said, it looks like a basket weave. I don't want any white showing from the slick stick. Let me put my head over this way. Sometimes when you have heavy detail, wetting your paint a little bit more than you normally would allows it to get into those cracks just that little bit easier so that you don't have to like jam it in there. Just wetting it that tiny bit allows it to travel inside all the creases. Okay, so now we have our gorgeous Vintage Duck Egg, which I feel like it's been a hot minute since I've used this color. I kind of forgot how much I like it. I do like it a lot. All right, so we have this color down, right? It's a beautiful base. We're gonna add a little bit of depth. Hey there, I see somebody talking to everybody. I love how everybody gets on my messages and starts like chatting in the comments. I like the camaraderie. Everybody needs to be friends. I like this little everybody get along thing. It makes me happy. Chat with each other, get to know each other. It's fun. You need a like-minded tribe to hang out with and play with paint. It's important. All right, so this is Vintage Duck Egg. A little tiny secret about Vintage Duck Egg. It covers kind of like no other blue. Vintage Duck Egg has great coverage. I have gotten away many times with painting one coat of Vintage Duck Egg on a piece. It has, some reason, the pigment in this little tiny jar goes so far. So if you're looking for a color that's gonna like be a really big bang for your buck, Vintage Duck Egg is totally it because it just covers so well, so well. So let's dry this little first coat a little bit. Let's get this dry because we're gonna start to mash my Best Dang brush on here to see what kind of color we can combine. And I really like to have that first coat be very, very dry when I'm working with my Best Dang brush. Because it is a brush that is partially synthetic and partially natural fibers, you're gonna find that it's definitely pokey. I like to call it my pokey brush. So if you're like jamming your brush on here and moving your paint around and your first coat really wasn't that dry, it's gonna take off some of that paint. And I don't want any of that white to show through on this piece. That's my handy dandy tip of the day, just so you know. First coats should be fairly dry. Like in the real world, if I wasn't painting for you all on here, I would do that first coat, let it get hard, come back in, work on the second coat after it's dry. All right, so let's add some Vintage Duck Egg and Antebellum Blue together and see what we can get. So it's darker, right? I think my plan is to kind of like fade the edges some. Let's try it out over here. So we're gonna add some of this beautiful Antebellum into the corners. And then you need to know that your duck egg does need to be activated, right? You can't just start pushing that Antebellum Blue around with no Vintage Duck Egg on here. It won't travel well. So you need to have that on there as well. And your Best Dang brush, I have a paper towel on the floor. You're gonna see me mashing it off. It works best when it's damp. It works best when it's a damp brush, and it's gonna collect your paint. This brush likes to hold a lot of paint in there. So using the cloth on the floor or the paper towel on the floor to wipe off your excess amount of paint is going to help you achieve the look that you want, all right? So I like to then hold my brush close up to the tip. That's gonna give me more control to my brush. If I come at it like this, that's not playing nice. You gotta come up here and hold your brush close to the tip. That's gonna give you more control with what's happening. And this brush is not light, this is a heavy brush. I'm gonna move in small circular motions, and you're gonna see me start to pull these colors together a little bit. Remembering that Antebellum Blue and Vintage Duck Egg are pretty darn close on the color wheel, right? They're very similar, like-minded colors. This is not a hard blend. I think out of all the things that I get asked as a brand ambassador, I get so many questions about blending. And I think that if you knew and watch me on the regular, you would know that using a Best Dang brush is like the magical touch for blending. It makes my job super easy. Okay, so I'm gonna trowel that over there. I feel like this needs a tiny bit more Vintage Duck Egg. It got a little muddy. Remember I told you this brush likes to hold the color in there. And these small circular motions. Let's see what we got. I like it. I like it. What do we think? What do we think of that depth that that's just giving? It's giving it a slight little depth and a slight little shadow in the creases. I think that's a good look, especially when you know I'm going to come in later with my Dixie Dirt and Earth and my Gilding Wax and Gold. Imagine all of these corners just a little bit darker and all of these edges gilded in gold. I'm thinking that might be the bomb.com. That might be pretty good. Sorry, I'm such a dork. It just happens. My daughter makes fun of me now. She's like, Mom, nobody says that anymore. Stop saying those things. I'm like, what? I can be jokey. I can try and be funny, right? Not so much to a 12-year-old. No moms are funny to the 12-year-old. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of re-wet this area. Let's add a little bit of Antebellum around each of these little faux nail heads and see what we can do. All right, I'm blotting my brush off and I'm gonna start to circle them in. I just wanna kind of darken some of these areas. I wanna give this piece some interest, some visual interest. Can you see how easy that is? You guys, the blending with this brush, it just gives it, I don't know, that little bit of a smokier edge. Can you come in closer? Let me bring you in a little closer so you can even see a tiny bit more. Can you see that nice little smoky edge? It's just the most simplest way to blend your colors together, keeping it nice and soft, keeping those edges smoky. I should even come in here. Let's see if we can add a little bit of Antebellum up in here. Just a touch. And then of course, re-wet your area where your vintage duck egg is. Let's see what'll happen if I can get my brush in here. Just kind of darken up that top section a bit. Not a lot, just a bit. Ooh, I like it. All right, it's growing on me. Now, here's another thing you're gonna learn about these two colors together, vintage duck egg and antebellum. They darken when they get dry. Right now, this is wet, which means, of course, the paint is going to be a little bit lighter value, okay? As this dries, vintage duck egg, and you can kind of see from the little part that I put right here that's wet versus say maybe somewhere up here that's a little bit more dry, it just has a different value. It darkens itself a touch, okay? Just a touch, not a lot. So I'm re-wetting my brush. I'm just gonna kind of smoke those two colors together. Bring some of that antebellum up there. Now see, it is a little harder in the areas, like in the corners down here and in this little crack. You could try it with a smaller brush. This is a clean French tip, which is another kind of a natural fiber brush. You can use a bit of a smaller brush to get in the corners. Hi Anne, how are you? Watching from Indiana. So I'm gonna use the smaller brush to kind of like fake out that little smoky area that I'm talking about. It's not gonna be the same as the Best Dang brush. It doesn't give you the same darkness, but close. Need to put some more vintage duck egg over here. So practicing on like a side or a corner or a drawer side is helpful when you're kind of deciding what your furniture wants to look like, right? Like I said, this one just wasn't talking to me. It wasn't telling me what it wanted to be. It was taking its time until I decided the blues and the golds. Let's do the same kind of darkness in this little Woodubend. We're gonna add some dark in the middle, maybe some dark around the edges. What do we think? Yeah? Not too much. I don't want to junk it up too much. I'm going to spray my brush and see if I can't get it to go in some of these cracks. Okay, let's add some beautiful duck egg over top, because remember that duck egg needs to be kind of like reactivated. And I'm going to spray my brush. I'm going to blot it off. Remembering it holds that paint in there. So you're going to have to blot it off. Let's see what we can do. We're going to start around the edges. That looks pretty. Good pick. Good color combo. See how it just darkens up those edges just that tiny bit? It just gives it that little bit more of a in-depth kind of a look. What do we think? Do we like this color combo? Throw me some hearts, show me some love. This is Antebellum Blue and Vintage Duck Egg, and your Best Dang brush giving you that gorgeous kind of blend. Let's see if we can put a little bit of some of the Antebellum down here. I'm going to try using my little French tip just to kind of smoke those edges in. I don't want to use too much of the Best Dang brush on this tiny little section. Obviously some parts are going to need a little bit more work. I feel like this edge will need more work, partially because I need to sit in front of it to look at it and see how it's going, but I like it. Do you think that it looks a little bit more growing up, say from this side, looking like a juvenile toy box, to maybe this side over here looking a little bit more warm, a little bit more rich, a little bit more growing up? I think that that Woodubend made a very, very big difference with what I'm trying to achieve on the piece. I think that adding the darkness when I come in with my Dixie Dirt, which if you don't know what Dixie Dirt is, it's a really great little powder. What'll happen is after this gets completely dry and I've finished painting my entire piece, I'll use my Easy Peasy spray wax and my Dixie Dirt, which is a pigment. I'll open it up and show you. It's powder, okay? So it looks like a little bit of makeup powder in there. What you're gonna do then is spray your areas where you want to adhere your Dixie Dirt, because this just can't go on naked. You need to have some sort of, or sort of a like adhering medium, whether it be your wax or your spray wax, So I will spray those corners, gently rub in the dirt, and smoke it out. Smoke out all of these edges, smoke out all of this detail. Then, of course, I'm going to come in with my Gilding Wax in gold because, hello, did you forget who you're talking to? Everything has to have a little bit of gold on it. It doesn't look finished to me unless I put gold on it. We're going to put a little bit of gold Gilding Wax in there too. And I'm going to be definitely like touching all of the edges and getting my fingers in there. I want you to weigh in. What do you think? Did the Woodubend grow the piece up a little bit? Did it mature it a little bit from like a simple child's toy box to a little bit more elegant? Because I really think that this is what made the piece change. I think that was it. Because without it, it just looks naked to me. It looks a little boring. So if you were wondering what Woodubend I used, let's see if I can find, where did you go? I told you the number at the beginning of the video. I always have a plan. There it is. It is Woodubend number 1333.10. It comes in a set of 2, and we adhered it to the front of the piece. I'm going to do obviously the other one over here, and then I think this beauty will be done. I think she's very pretty. You think she grew up a little bit with that Woodubend? That she needed some jewelry to kind of age her? She needed to get a little fake ID going on over here to grow up? Sorry. Well, it is what it is. I think Woodubend saved the day. It rescued this tiny little toy box. The colors I used today are Vintage Duck Egg and Antebellum Blue. I showed you how to really use that brush and kind of like twirl it around and smoke out those edges some, adding that little bit of definition onto the piece. I think that adding the Dixie Dirt and Earth will really make everything pop. I'm happy. This finally did turn out the way that I wanted. I'm quite happy with the way that she grew up and changed, added her little bit of makeup and her little jewelry, changed the piece. So stay tuned. If you want to see me finish this, you can come over and like my page, which is the Top Drawer RVA. I linked it above my head. You guys can come up there, follow me, and we'll work on this together. I'll save this piece to work on with you all. How about that? Make sure you're following along. I don't know when I'll hop on live. Just be prepared. If you miss it, I'll save it to my page. It'll always be over there, living on the Top Drawer RVA page. But we will finish painting her, and then we will add her details with the Dixie Dirt and the beautiful Gilding Wax, and she will be ready for a whole new life.